All right. I'll try not to bore you all.
What's up, John? You're boring, though.
All right. Lance says I'm already boring. So, short introduction. My name is John Biegler. I've been in real estate since 2017. Started pretty early by coming to this meeting. So you're in a good spot, in my opinion, if you're new to this. So I never really wanted to be in real estate. Growing up, I grew up in a small town. Most of my experiences with real estate were from landlords who either were slumlords or complained about it nonstop. So I just didn't have a great perspective of what being in real estate was. I had a friend, Joe Tickle, sitting in the back in the middle. He argued with me a lot about art. I'm kind of argumentative. So, so he convinced me that I should go to a seminar and learn a little bit more about real estate. So I went to the seminar and I was blown away by the numbers because I just had no concept up to that point. So looking at the tax strategies, the compounding rentals, these guys are talking about 6-figure profits from their flips. All of that was new to me, and I'm here for 2 days. I'm just surrounded by it. So I was all in at that point. The seminar was put on by Fortune Builders, which I know Lance has done. Dan Merrill's the main guy over there. They have some of the best salesmen in the world, in my opinion. So they convinced us to spend about $45,000 on their training. So while it's worth it in one sense, because it makes you go head in. Like you're in head first at that point. But in hindsight, this is 2017. It was basically 2 down payments at that point. So in hindsight, it got me into it, but there was nothing that you couldn't learn for free that I learned in that training. Looks like I got a double slide. So I started coming to this real estate meetup. I think February was the first one I came to. At that one, I met some key people who have had a pretty big impact on my real estate journey. One of them, Dave Bader in the back over there.
Dave's here.
And then another one is Nate Dennis, who is probably out there drinking at the bar. Or smoking. But Dave, at that time, he was wholesaling a lot of houses. And we didn't do a ton of real estate together, but I did buy 1 or 2 flips from him. And Nate was my agent when I was getting into it, and he brought me a lot of my deals. So I was never one of the ones who did a lot of the marketing and stuff like that myself, because I was never full-time in real estate. My full-time thing is roofing. So because I wasn't full-time, I never really pursued the marketing and the bandit signs and all that kind of stuff that a lot of people do. I wanted people who were already good at that to bring me the deals, and I would flip them. And I also never really did the work myself for the most part. I would contract it out to somebody. So my first deal was brought to us. Well, Joe and I were partners in this too. So Joe, who I mentioned, convinced me to get into real estate. We were partners in the real estate. Now we're partners in the roofing, our new roofing company. So Nate Dennis brought us the first deal. It was a 4-bedroom, 1-bathroom, single-family rental in the Russian Bottoms. It's for sale for $105,000, which, being brand new into it, seemed like a lot of money to us. It had a brand new lease. It cash flowed on paper. So we went under contract on it around May of 2017. So this is the next phase of that story. So, if you can't read it, neighbors and Lincoln police frustrated by game day parties. That brand new lease, when you see brand new leases and you're looking at a deal, huge red flag. Because what happens is somebody's trying to sell a deal, and what they do is they fill the units. They don't care about the quality of the tenants. They want to get the revenue up so they can sell you the deal. with the current revenue numbers looking good. So we didn't know that. At the time, we were just kind of like, oh, it's full, so we don't have to worry about, it being empty, not having the cash flow, whatever. So we got to deal with these guys. So the lease that we took over, it was a one-page lease. It had no co-signers. These are college kids, all like frat kids. Had nothing in it for us to be able to kick them out. Even with the party, the police were all over us. We didn't want to be vacant for the winter, so we decided to let it play out. That last slide, that was a Husker game day. I was at the Husker game, and my friend who I was there with, he's like on his phone, he goes, dude, isn't this your house? And I'm like, what? Like it's on the news, So the pros of the tenants, they always paid their rent on time because they knew that was the one way they could get kicked out. We were not vacant through the winter like we wanted, and we got to know the police department really well. Remember, this is Nate Dennis's fault. So the cons of the tenants. They shut off the gas for Christmas break. They're from like Arizona or something, so they just didn't know that things would freeze, I guess. That happened to be a Christmas break where it was negative 15 degrees, so it froze real good. They also didn't tell us about the AC drain line being clogged, and this was during the summer, the one was during the winter, so it was constant. They flooded the basement just by the AC leaking out of the furnace for that long. So not like a ton of water, but enough that it ruined, all the carpet and all that. So they also got us a nice mice infestation. And when I mean like infestation, I mean we put traps in there and caught 27 mice in like a day and a half. So these guys, what they did, college kids, they just had pizzas laying on, like half-eaten pizzas just laying on the floor, like biggest mess you ever saw. So moral of the story, don't take over leases unless you have to. So how we got rid of them, they're all pathological liars. So, they were sitting there telling their parents that they were the good kid and because the police are like all over them, right? So they kept telling their parents that they're the good kid, the roommates are the bad kid. So we decided to play into that a little bit. I can work with that. So I just reached out to each one of their parents and told them how their roommates were dragging their son into the gutter. And they really needed to get their good kid, their little angel, out of this house. And I got every one of those parents to buy out their lease and get their kid out of there. So that worked out pretty well. We actually were able to get in there, do a rehab on it. At that time, that's the only one we ever worked on ourselves. So Joe and I went in, we were working, I can't remember, we were on the crunch. We rented it before we even released it. We showed the house, we were like, yeah, I know it looks like crap right now, but it's gonna look good. So we leased it, and then we had like 7 days to get it flipped. We did it all ourselves, working, I think we pulled like 5 all-nighters in a week. Again, Nate's fault.
Yeah, I believe it.
So we ended up selling that property. First, we rented it to some college kids for 4 years. These kids, we met ourselves, and the reason I throw this in here is I don't want to discourage you from renting to college kids, because we've actually had really good experiences with renting to college students. The key, I think, is you have to meet with them, and you have to know them a little bit and know a little bit about human nature. And you guys see, are these party kids, or are these kids that are going to college to actually learn? Or are these kids who, maybe they're small town kids or whatever it is? A lot of those you're gonna have better experiences with. These ones are actually from private school in Omaha, which doesn't sound great, but but they were very serious. They're all kind of outdoorsy type, and they took outstanding care of our property. It is in better shape than when they left than it was when they moved in. And that was right after we flipped it. They like cleaned up the yard and all kinds of stuff. So we refinanced that in 2020 when the rates are really low, and we pulled out about $30,000 of cash. And then we sold it in 2022 and pulled out another $45,000. In the meantime, while it was rented, we were cash flowing about $700 a month. So you do the math on it, it was a pain for the first year, but it made pretty good returns for a $105,000 property. That's the part Nate did right. The only part. So, same year, let's see, 2020, when we refinanced the one, we pulled the $30,000 out, and part of that went, we bought a 15-plex. So this is in the south of downtown neighborhood. So we just really wanted to stick in those nice neighborhoods. We bought this one in November of 2020. And this one had a lot of deferred maintenance. So again, Nate's fault, in case anybody's curious.
It's Jim and the rough guy.
The rents were crazy. Like, in 2020, these rents were like $350, $375. Like, it is insane. So we bought it for $38 a door, and we thought we had a lot of upside here. So some of the problems we experienced, generally with the tenants, breaking into our washing machines, defecating in the laundry room.
You sure that wasn't Nate?
Hard to tell for sure if there's more tenants or homeless people sometimes, but generally speaking, I think it is the tenants. And the other problem we had is some of the stuff was homeless people, but the tenants were friends with the homeless people, so they would let them in. So one person this is, mind you, across the street from a police station, just out in the front yard, beating some lady up. The police obviously see him, and so they come over to get him, and he goes, these people are not smart. He runs into his own apartment, so they know where he's at. So then the police want to kick down our door and all that. But somehow I found out, I had a guy in the hallways painting at the time, and he called me like, dude, you got to get down here. The police are all over this place, or whatever. So I called the police department, like, there's a key code. Do not kick down the door. And they actually did it. They went and got the key, let themselves in, did not kick down our doors. That was nice.
Thanks.
Like I said, it's good to know the police, which if you buy properties with Nate.
Yeah. Value added.
So evictions, when we bought this property, one of the first things we did is evict about 3/4 of the tenants. And we got rid of most of the bad ones, but the replacements, they were better, but not that much better. So we got rid of the ones that weren't paying. The $350 a month, still not paying. We fixed up the common areas, so hallways, entryway, all that. Laundry room as much as we could with. And then we brought up the rents about $100, which doesn't seem like a lot when you're going from $350 to $450, but that's a 30% increase. So then we started rehabbing some of the units. So we started putting about $15,000 in per unit, which is not any kind of crazy rehab. This building is 110 years old, maybe. Those rents we brought up an additional $150. So now we had 2-3 units rehabbed, and interest rates were starting to climb. So we decided to sell this property before we got too much farther into it, and while the rates were still low. So, and the rates did start hiking us, and the property value did start dropping as we were selling it. So we ended up selling it in November 2022. Who here knows the difference between long-term capital gains and short-term capital gains? Chase does. So we planned this one almost accidentally, but but we sold it like the day after the property went from long-term to short-term or from short-term to long-term capital gains, which saves us about 20% on your taxes. Not 20%, 20% off of your profit going to your taxes. So it's about half the tax rate compared to if you were paying short-term capital gains. So if you're ever doing that, the other option is you can 1031 it, roll all your profit forward. But if you ever have a property that's right at that 2-year mark, make sure you time it so you can close after it turns into long-term capital gains. Also talk to a CPA, not me. So we sold it at about $50,000 a door, or right at $50,000 exactly, on the dot. Yep. So do the math. Even with it, we dealt with some things. We didn't have too much money into it with only flipping 2 or 3 units in the common areas. So we made about $100,000 of profit off of that. The thing that's crazy is when you look at it, the profit from that was nearly identical to the profit from our single family rental. And what I gathered from that was that my strengths were not investing with low income class C, class D people. My strengths were more investing with the higher income class B, class A, because I don't have the time to invest that it takes to deal with the problems that come with the lower income bracket. So you've got to invest according to your strengths. The tenant class matters. If you have the stomach for those issues that come with the lower tax brackets, there is a lot of money to be made. You have to be able to spend the time to do it. You have to be able to pay attention to the property in the way that it requires, but there is money to be made. If you don't have that, then you should look elsewhere, because that property had a lot more money to be made in it than the $100,000 that we made. We should have made $300,000, $400,000. The other thing to understand about Class C and D properties is they require significant capital investment. You cannot buy these properties and think that you're going to cash flow them and bring them up to where you'd like to see them. You have to understand that you're going to be putting money in, and a lot of it. Okay, so that's kind of my background and a couple of stories that from a couple of investments. So I want to talk a little bit about insurance claims and what you can do with those when you're buying properties especially. So I've got a bit of a case study. So we went under contract on a little complex for $810,000. This one was Nate also.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. Yeah.
I decided to give him a good one. So down payment, 20% to the bank. Down payment, $162,000. We inspected that property and found storm damages to quite a bit of the exterior. So what we do is we get the seller to file a claim with their insurance company, and then they're going to pass those proceeds to us at closing. So the way this one works out, the insurance comes out, they agreed to the damages that we found. So now we have a check from the insurance for $80,000. We have new roofing, siding, windows, a bunch of painting, stuff like that. And now, because of that, our cash to close is only $85,000 instead of $185,000, or sorry, $170,000. So you're still going to be spending that money later because you have to do the roofing, siding, all that kind of stuff, but your actual cash of close right up front is lower. So it makes that a little bit more of a palatable transaction, I guess. Now, some of the benefits of doing this, the insurance companies are not big fans of commercial properties right now. Anybody who owns a home or owns apartments or rentals right now, you've seen hikes in your insurance rates, you've seen your deductibles go up. People who own a lot of apartment complexes, what I hear from them all over the place is they're having problems even getting insurance. So especially if you have claims on those complexes. And with apartments, you're pretty much always going to have some claims because there are a lot of weird little things that happen. So the thing they really don't like is old roofs, old exteriors. In my experience, I mean, that's the side I see. So the other thing is when you do put those new roofs on, you're going to get a new discount from your insurance company for having class 4 or class 3 impact resistant shingles. Not every shingle qualifies for that, but every shingle we use does. So, and most decent roofers now are using a class 3 at least shingle. So you're going to get a discount from that, and that could be maybe, if I was throwing an average out, it's going to be 15 to 20% off of your premiums every year. So some of them are higher, some of them are lower, but it can be pretty significant. I see as much as 35% off your premiums. So obviously that adds up. There are some potential pitfalls of this. So one of the things we use, which we have one going on right here in the room, when you're selling the property, or when they're selling the property to you, there's usually not enough time between when you go under contract, we find damage, and now you want them to file a claim. There's usually not enough time to have the adjuster out, agree on your whole estimate, how much damage there is. So you use what's called an assignment of benefits. And what that is they're assigning their benefits from their policy and their claim in their policy to you when you buy the property. It's a little bit tricky to do, and one of the pitfalls is that it can be denied by the insurance company. It depends on the policy language. Some insurance companies just flat out don't deny it. That's generally not the case or don't accept it. That's generally not the case because that's a kind of a liability for them. There's some case law around that. Generally what they're going to do is they're going to try to pick apart your denial or your assignment of benefits, so they can deny it based on the language that was used or the way that it was formed. So there is a new case as of about 2 years ago, which Dave Bader got mixed up in in a roundabout way. But
Nate's fault.
It's Nate's fault too. This one actually is Nate's fault. So
Get him? 3 for 3.
no.
Like 5.
So there's a newer judgment that came down from, I believe it was the Nebraska Supreme Court, but it basically said that any assignment of benefits have to have a full scope of work and an agreed upon price when you assign that claim. So what happened is these insurance companies, they knew that judgment was coming, and so they just slow rolled everything for like a year, right? They just wouldn't even acknowledge that you sent them that email. And so then all of a sudden this judgment happens, and within 2 weeks, everybody got all these letters like, oh, sorry, this is invalid, this is invalid. Like, it's like they all knew it was coming. So if you wonder who's in the ear of the lawmakers, it's not the contractors. So another pitfall is proper documentation with the seller. One thing that's pretty common is who's responsible for the deductible. So when you're assigning a claim, generally speaking, whoever is the policy holder is responsible for that deductible. And in commercial or rentals, you can have higher deductibles. It might be $5,000. You see a lot on like apartments and stuff. We see a lot of $25,000 or $100,000 deductibles. So it is a big deal to make sure you hash that out, because generally speaking, you're going to have to assume that deductible in order to get the seller to agree to file a claim for you. So, and I actually did, when I bought my own personal house, I did the exact same thing. So I did have to assume that deductible, but if they did agree to file a claim, I got new siding, new roofing, new gutters, all that. And then the other thing is, because the insurance company, there's a chance of them denying that assignment of benefits, you want to have something similar to what the title companies use. So when you go to closing with the title company, they're always going to have something like, oh, if we miss some documents, you're agreeing to come back and sign those documents because we need them, whatever, right? So get something put together saying basically a similar thing, that if there are any documents needed for that assignment of benefits later, if you have to completely redo it, they're agreeing to come back and actually help you with that. The other pitfall is that it can slow down closing. So sometimes the assignment of benefits can take a while. Sometimes the adjusters haven't been out. For whatever reason, it might push your closing back a month, maybe 2 months. So just be aware that if you're going that route, it is something that could happen. is your closing could be pushed back. And as long as everybody's on the same page of that, it's usually not that big of an issue. But if it's a big deal for people to have to close on a certain day, like maybe they have a 1031 or something like that, it might not be the right fit if you don't have enough time. Some key points: do not underwrite deals relying on insurance funds, because you never know what the insurance company is going to do. Sometimes you see people, I have seen people say the deal only works if we get insurance money. And that's not, to me, that's a big risk, because if you're assigning a benefit, doing the assignment of benefits, and the insurance company just never pays out any money, and the deal only worked because of that, now you already own the property, but now the deal doesn't work. So you have to be aware of that. Underwrite your deals just like you normally would. And if you get insurance money for anything, that's gravy. Kind of going back to what we had, the insurance companies do not like to go fast. So give us more time than what you think is necessary. So when it comes to verbiage for some of these assignment of benefits, stuff like that, we do have some, because we've seen them get done. We see the attorneys, how they write them. We do have some stuff we can help you with, kind of steering in the right direction. But of course, talk to an attorney. These are not simple things. I mean, you're doing a transaction in real estate with something like this, you should have an attorney. And honestly, most attorneys haven't heard of it either. So, so look for a good attorney. Now we're going to run into the real problem, I think. I didn't make that many slides. So, so I'm a short speaker. Just because Nate was here, I knew he had a very short attention span. So, does anybody have any questions about any of that?
Oh, surprise, surprise.
Tell us how you financed that first deal.
Well, whatever money we had left after we paid Fortune Builders, we just scrapped it all together and threw it into that, the down payment. We went through Frontier Bank. Frontier Bank was very good to work with. We were new to real estate, so they only gave us a 15-year loan, I think, on it. So the cash flow, that hurt the cash flow a little bit, but it still worked. So we went ahead and closed it. It worked on paper, but.
Did they have offered you to do a balloon payment on that?
It was, it's 15-year with a 5-year, what is that what they call it, balloon? Yeah, balloon on every 5 years. So we never actually hit that because we refinanced it in 2020. That time we went to Cattle Bank. So we never actually hit any of those balloons, but that's how we did it. I think the rate back then was 4.5 maybe.
I think 475 was your first time. I think 475 was the Frontier. Was that?
Yeah, something like that. Then 2020 we were getting loans for 3.75 on commercial stuff. It was pretty nice. I mean, Dave was probably getting like 3.0, but. Those balloons are about ready to come up. You'll be sorry. All right. What other questions do we have?
On that, on the finance deal, did you have that? Did you buy that in an LLC or did you buy that under somebody's name?
Yeah, we bought it in an LLC. That's one thing I do think is important, even for the simple fact that when you form an LLC and you have a partnership, you have to put together a operating agreement. And whether you think you need the protection of an LLC or not, and some people say they don't for, if they have less than 5 properties or whatever people say. I don't agree with that, but whatever. So either way though, the operating agreement itself is an important and key feature of the LLC. If you have partners, the operating agreement is going to make you hash out, and if eventually you're going to have disagreements, probably most partnerships don't last. So basically with an operating agreement, you're hashing out upfront how that split might go, how the whatever, really, like if you want to buy one of them out, one of them wants out, whatever it might be, you hash all that out. We actually had one partner in that 15-plex. We had a partner who he wasn't super happy with us. We weren't super happy with him. We were friends, but we had an operating agreement. And because of that operating agreement, we were able to just execute that we were buying them out. It was all set out exactly how it went down. The payments were on a 5-year schedule, so it's not like it stretched anybody either. And, he got some return on his money still. We were able to buy him out. We're still friends, right? And that's, maybe it's just because you're friends doesn't mean that you're going to be able to work together, right? And so, I think that's an important thing to do. I would not skimp on an LLC. They're so cheap to form. I have like 10 of them that I don't even use, so you can buy one for me if you want. So, what else? We've been on a slow roll probably for a year and a half. Yeah, Nate's not happy.
Whole fucking year.
No, after the rates went up quite a bit, deals just weren't cash flowing the way I liked, the way I underwrite the deals. I want to see some cash flow or at least break even. Yeah, on the cash flow side, yeah. I look at cap rate, I look at cash flow. I want to see it break even at least. And I also don't like, in the last few years, people have been trying to sell on pro formas, meaning that they're like, oh, I know it's only rented for $500 a month, but it could be rented for $800 a month. So we're going to sell it to you like it was rented for $800 a month. And I'm like, that's BS. Why didn't you rent it for $800 a month then?
Exactly.
So like nobody rents it for less than what they think they can get, right? Some people are just lazy and they just keep the same tenants forever and ever. Speaking of that, that 15-plex, there was a guy in there for 42 years.
He's still alive?
He was nice.
He was very nice. He still had shag carpet. Like his whole unit was from the 80s and he was totally happy with it. We're like, dude, do you want new carpet? And he's like, nah, it's fine. 70s, I don't know. Lance would know how old that is. What's that?
I was gonna say, what about the two blind sisters in the one unit?
So do you like single family or multi-bidder?
I like small multifamily the best. So out of everything I've done, I prefer the 7-plexes, 6-plexes, stuff like that. Duplexes are pretty good. And actually one of the reasons I still have duplexes is you don't have to deal with the city. So 3 units or higher, you have to have your inspections and COC inspections when you buy them and sell them. Duplexes, skirt right under that rule, and you don't have to deal with the city. So that's a nice feature. And I have some for sale if anybody wants them.
What's the cap rate?
I don't know, I haven't looked.
Selling on the pro forma?
Yeah, they're on a pro forma though. No, I'll probably just sell them for like 1% rule, honestly. But
So for somebody starting out in this whole business, when would you suggest somebody start looking at commercial or whatever if that's what they were interested in?
Any experience in it?
Nope.
Yeah, maybe don't start there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't-
planning on it. That's why I asked the question.
I wouldn't start there.
There at some
Oh,
point,
okay.
but not yet, no.
I think doing at least a handful of single family will teach you the ropes of dealing with tenants and stuff like that. The other thing that's hard about commercial is the property managers. So when you're doing single family, you can manage yourself for, I don't know, if you have another job, maybe you can manage 5 units yourself, right? But when you get to multifamily and you have 20 units or whatever it might be, you're gonna have a property manager handle that most likely. And it's hard to find a good property manager. And sometimes they're a good property manager, but they're not good for you. You might have a different communication method. So you're gonna burn through some property managers more likely than not. So when you're first starting out, when you switch a property manager, it costs a lot of money. So, because you have to float an entire month's rent to switch. So it's not an easy thing you want to do. Plus you have to deal with tenants not being happy. You lose some tenants usually. So, yeah. I don't know that there's a right or wrong time. If that's something you want to do, I do it, Yeah, just, try to go with it with your eyes open. Yeah.
That was my plan.
And honestly, I am a big fan of partnerships because you can, a lot of people say like a partnership is the only ship that always sinks, right?
That's adorable.
I've never had one.
That's a Steve shampoo thing. So, personally, I like partnerships because what you can do with a partnership, if you know your own strengths and weaknesses, you can take somebody or partner with somebody who has the opposite strengths and weaknesses. And the hard thing about that is you have to be able to communicate with them because you probably have different communication methods too. But if you can figure that out, then now you have somebody who's really good at things you're not, and you can attack problems in ways that you would not be able to do yourself. Any other questions? Nate? Oh, Nate wants me to tell a funny story about him.
Oh, you really? You're telling? Okay, go ahead. I want to see how you phrase this story. Go ahead.
So Nate, we were golfing last fall, and Nate thought it'd be awesome to run me over with a golf cart. Here comes his story. Oh, he twisted my ankle. My bad.
What's the next
So, so all I did was just drove towards him
part? Speed downhill.
at a fast speed downhill on a fairway.
He jumped right in front of you, right?
Pretty much, yeah. So I stepped on the brakes, like literally like here to the door, and it just slides. So I'm like, whatever. And he's drunk. So
Breaking an arm. Let's clarify this story.
he did break his arm.
My 5 up in the air, 5 feet up in the air. He hit me that fast, guys. Landed on my arm, and I'm like, oh, my arm feels funny. Long story short, a couple days later, my wife looks at it and goes, you're an idiot. You broke your arm.
He didn't go to the doctor for a couple of days.
So don't piss him off.
That was right after he made me buy that one really bad deal.
What's in the near future for real estate for you?
Well, we are trying to get Nate to send us stuff, but
What are you looking for?
there's nothing out there right now.
Well, that's not true. You gotta be able to, be able to buy.
So I have someone who wants to partner on anything in the Midwest, like in this area, Kansas City, Lincoln, Omaha, 40 units or more. Full disclosure, I've not worked with this person, so I don't know how serious they are. They seem serious, but sometimes you never know. But yep, sometimes what happens with people who are wanting to partner and look at these bigger deals, sometimes they'll look at them, they'll go under contract, they get cold feet, and you got to deal with the shit show. So
Yeah.
I do not like that. One of the things I do pride myself in is always closing. So I think I've only had one deal in 6 years, 7 years that I've not closed on. So
I will say on a side note, as an agent that primarily deals with off-market commercial deals, things like that, having the ability to close and actually being known as a closer with buyers, as John or Dave, for example, that is huge because the reputation follows. If you're a guy that puts shit under contract, you don't close, people learn this. Nebraska's a big small town, so they learn very quickly who you are. So having that reputation is huge, truly. So don't waste people's time. If it doesn't work, guys. It's not gonna hurt anybody's feelings. Don't close the damn deal, don't waste anybody's time, don't put it under contract. Do your due diligence.
just
If it works,
try to be smart up front before you go under contract. Look for good deals before you sign on a dotted line, and know what you're looking for. That's a big important thing. A lot of people are just out there looking for any real estate, but you gotta have, people talk about a buy box. You've gotta know what you're looking for. If it's 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom houses, or if it's 7 or 6-plex apartment buildings or whatever it is. Like me, I want 7 and 6plex buildings, but I only want 2 bedrooms or more. I don't want 1 bedrooms. Generally, I just want 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms. I don't really want a bunch of 4 bedrooms. So you've got to know what your niche is, because there are so many different ways in real estate. And if you try doing everything, you're never going to be good at any of them. So you've got to find what you're good at and stick with that niche.
So on those 7 plexes, what's your target cap rate?
What's my what?
On the 7, whatever plexes, 5 to 7, 9, whatever, what is your target cap rate?
Usually my target cap rate is 1 to 1.5% above what my interest rate is going to be on my loan. So I look at it a little bit different than, because interest rates are changing, your cap rates have to change with it. In order to, like the only reason you're using a cap rate is to underwrite quickly. So you can look at something quick, know if it's, gonna work, maybe, right? If I look at a deal and it's 4 cap, I'm like, it's not gonna work right now because I'm gonna get a 7.5% rate, right? So that's just how I see it. Does everybody understand what cap rate is? What? I forgot. Actually, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's net income divided by, I always just use the calculator, so I can't remember anymore. Net income divided by, come on, Nate. Dave, help me. Yes, yeah. It can be fudged in a few ways. So sometimes you look at a cap rate, it looks really bad, but you look like, yeah.
You don't look at cap rates for like 2s and 4s and 6s though. Those are too small. Usually you look at bigger buildings. So when everybody talks about a cap rate on something like a 6 or lower, it doesn't make sense because it's looked at.
Yeah, until you're in that like 6.
Your equation.
Until you're at like 6, 7 at least, probably more like 10 or 12 plex. Cap rates are not really applicable. So. Below that, just look at your cash flow and look at your cash on cash return. People have different ways. That's how I do it.
That's a good check. I agree.
But if you get a really good banker, you can't look at cash on cash return because you have no money into it. That's the other thing. Bankers, they can be a little bit fickle, I guess. Sometimes banks are like really warm on real estate and they cool down a little bit. I don't really know why for sure. I know it has somewhat to do with, what money they have in reserves and what they need to loan out to make money and all that. Like I said, I started with Frontier Bank. I still think they're really good to work with. Generally now I work with Cattle Bank. I have a really good relationship with my lender there. Frontier Bank has changed lenders on me a few times, people leaving and going and coming. If I have something big, I still will go to Frontier Bank because they can write bigger deals than Cattle can. If I'm not mistaken anyway. It seems like on the bigger ones, they're a little bit more willing to bend a little bit, where Cattle on the smaller ones is extremely good. So for me, my experience with them, like say I had a flip. Last flip I did, I brought them the thing, showed them what it was, told them what I wanted to do to the property, how much it was gonna cost. They gave me all the money to buy it, all the money to rehab it at 4% interest only. And I went and all I paid for was the flood insurance. And I flipped that thing and sold it and paid them. And then they didn't even charge me the interest only until after I had sold it. So I literally had no money into it until I was done, other than the $400 of flood insurance, which pretty hard to complain about $400 of flood insurance. So, yeah, so a relationship with your banker is important. There are limits to what they can do, but it depends on the property or what kind of investing you're doing too. If you're trying to do, I don't know, if you're trying to build things ground up, maybe they're not so good to work with. I'm not saying they're not, but that's not what I do. So you might need to find a different banker who likes that sector more.